Hello, how y'all doing? My name is Mongo Slade, and today we're going to talk about the state of Chris Jericho. This comes on the heel of the 30th anniversary episode of AEW Dynamite, and so I just want to talk about Chris Jericho a little bit. I did an appreciation video earlier this week. I did the AEW anniversary show review, and I was sitting back thinking to myself, and I was like, if there's one thing you can say about Chris Jericho, that is the absolute gospel. Is that at 50 plus years old, Chris Jericho spent the bulk of his career completely undervalued and in some cases even treated like absolute shit by various promoters, specifically Vince McMahon, obviously. In WCW, he was treated like a comedy act. He was secondary to everybody else. He was too small, which is something that a lot of his contemporaries went through. Eddie Guerrero, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. A lot of those guys, the Chris Benoit, they all got the "you're too small" label. Jericho has a big personality, and his personality alone should have been enough. But he is short. He's like 5'11", maybe 6 feet even, you know, and he was a cruiserweight. So they kind of treated him like shit in WCW. Even when he was starting to really gain steam, he never really got the push. He never really got to be anywhere near the top of the cards in WCW. His efforts were completely wasted in WCW. So he jumped ship to WWE smartly, where they treated him a little bit better. Of course, he still got dogged out because his work wasn't what they wanted it to be. So the first couple of months of his WWE career, maybe even the first year or so, was just him basically being shit on, being a healthy scratch from cards not being used. And then he sort of found his niche. They kind of started using his voice, and his voice made up for his voice and his antics and his brain. It made up for what he lacked in size. And so he finally, he reached the pinnacle. He did the mid-card thing. He reached the pinnacle, became the main event, had a huge fart of a match at WrestleMania 18. Of course, he couldn't top Hogan versus Rock. But Jericho, that was sort of the pinnacle as far as Jericho is concerned. He main evented WrestleMania. I mean, good match, bad match, no matter how you want to see it. The match, main event at WrestleMania. He's one of the very few men who can say that he main evented, closed the show on WrestleMania. But since then, you can say that Jericho really has struggled to get back anywhere near that spot. To be quite honest, Chris Jericho really peaked in 2000 and what was that, 2? That year? Because he subsequently fell off a fucking cliff. After that, 2003, 2004, what the hell did Chris Jericho do? Well, he wrestled Shawn Michaels in 2003, WrestleMania. That was pretty good. That was awesome. And then in 2004, he really didn't do much of anything. He was in a nothing match with Christian. Then in 2005, he was in the Money in the Bank match, I believe, which he created. He still didn't win it, but he created it. And then he kind of started facing some burnout. He did the John Cena thing where they actually put him somewhere near a main event at that point. But Chris Jericho wasn't really a main event guy. He wasn't. And from 2005, which was his last one-on-one match with Cena, until he turned heel like 2 or 3 years later, he wasn't wrestling in main events. Jericho wasn't treated like a big deal. He wasn't treated like a star. And we, the fans, have always thought Chris Jericho was one of our guys. He's one of the guys, like we say, like Shawn Michaels, like Bret Hart, like Eddie Guerrero, like Chris Benoit, a workhorse, who we always say, man, Jericho should be in that spot. Or why can't Jericho be the champion? Or why can't we push Jericho further? And I know that we went through that, because I went through it. I didn't see him win the title. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't even watching the business. When I came back, his whole undisputed title run had already ended. So I had to go back and look at that stuff. And even then, he wasn't really treated that great, as the undisputed champion. He always just felt like a guy on the outside. And I say that Jericho is he is sort of the modern day Shawn Michaels, in so much that he had so much talent, but it was, he just did not have he was missing something. The size might have been. He didn't have the grit. He didn't have the attitude. He didn't have the chip on his shoulder that Shawn had. Jericho was too nice. He was, willing to put over the guy who really didn't have much. Jericho did so many useless fucking jobs in his entire career. Losing, I mean, I remember he lost to Batista by a clothesline. Batista clotheslined him and he pinned him. I remember some silly, just absolute silly stuff going on in Chris Jericho's career after he won the Undisputed title. Just pathetic things that he was doing, like silly gimmicks with Christian. He was running around Raw naked. All these sorts of things that he was doing. And it was all because, hey, Jericho is a star. He was main event at WrestleMania. He was the top guy. But is the only person that was really talking about that was Chris Jericho. Like he was the only one that was really talking about, I beat The Rock and Steve Austin in the same night. He was never positioned as a guy who beat The Rock and Steve Austin in the same night. Hell, he could barely beat just about anybody on any given night. There was long stretches there where Jericho really did nothing but host his TV show. What was it called? What did they call it? I forget what the Jericho show was called because it's been so long since I've seen it. And he pretty much just did comedy stuff. That was pretty much his entire, I wouldn't say his entire WWE run, because he had a very successful run. And he was the occasional main event guy. He was a guy who was a stable hand that when you needed somebody to take the title, Jericho could take the title and hold it. He was in a good position, especially when he did the second run with Shawn Michaels and he won the World Heavyweight Championship. Jericho was in the right spot. He was great guy, great talent. But when you look at the tentpole events, Jericho was never on the level of a guy like even Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle main evented more pay-per-views than Chris Jericho did. Kurt Angle main evented more WrestleManias than Chris Jericho, if I remember correctly, or they main evented the same amount of WrestleManias. Because I think that Kurt Angle main evented WrestleMania 19, and I think that was the only one. Well, he wrestled for the title at 20, but that wasn't the main event. So yeah, I think but Angle was routinely going into WrestleMania as the champion. Even if he wasn't in the last match. Kurt Angle was routinely the champion, routinely positioned as being a guy who should be the champion, even if he's not the champion. They didn't treat Kurt Angle, even when Kurt Angle said to him, he came out in these interviews and said he didn't feel like he was Vince's guy anymore. This was 2006. If you compare Kurt Angle's 2006 to Chris Jericho's 2006, there's no comparison. And Angle was peeled up. And Jericho was in good shape. He wasn't fat. He wasn't out of shape. He wasn't old. But if you compare him to his contemporaries, people with similar talent and similar abilities to him, Jericho was never positioned that way. And I could tell that it really probably did not bother him until 2014, 2015. Or maybe 2013. I don't know. It probably wasn't 13. The year of the Kevin Owens match at WrestleMania. Because it was supposed to be for the Undisputed title. He took the title and then Vince took the title and gave it to Goldberg. And then Owens and Jericho had that match at WrestleMania. That was for the U.S. title. And then Vince shit on the match because Kevin Owens did flips and he wasn't supposed to be doing flips. And Jericho just felt like enough. It's like the rubber band snapped in his head. And he basically said, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I'm tired of being devalued. It's been over 10 years at that point. It's been 20 years or some shit that he had been, kicked around and treated as he wasn't the big star that he really feels like he should have been. And to most of us, that he really is. I mean, when you look at Jericho in the recent years, before he left, what was the biggest match that he was really a part of? The WrestleMania feud with CM Punk, a match that nobody thought that he would had any chance of winning, and he didn't win. Then he had these, the fart matches with Dean Ambrose, and the Asylum match, which turned into absolute dog shit. It was just necessary. It was time for him to go. The Kurt Angle, the Kevin Owens things was kind of a flop. The Dean Ambrose thing was a flop. He did good with the CM Punk thing. That was good. But that was about it. It was time for him to do something new. And he went to Japan, and he was completely different. You know, he had changed his look. His body type had changed, which was really strange because he had gained a lot of weight. And now it is Chris Jericho who thinks he's a huge star because we all believe he had already been a huge star. But now we're looking at it and saying, yeah, 2018, 2019, 2020 Chris Jericho ain't 2000 Chris Jericho. It ain't 2004 Chris Jericho. It ain't 2006 Chris Jericho. It ain't 2008 Chris Jericho. It ain't even 2020, 12 Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho is shot. Okay? Like, that's just... The Jericho now is an absolute egomaniac. Even outside of the ring, he seems to be a huge egomaniac. And it's the chip that has been on his shoulder for the last few years of being dogged out and being treated like shit, and probably not being financially taken care of as he felt he should have been. And now Jericho's is basically turned into a fucking vampire. Okay, he is draining the shit out of AEW. Jericho is just there to chill, man. Okay, this is why I brought up Kurt Angle. Look at what Kurt Angle did for TNA. Kurt Angle went to TNA. He was still on his bullshit. But Kurt Angle brought some real shit to TNA. Okay? From the moment Kurt Angle stepped in the ring with Samoa Joe, he brought legitimacy to TNA. It was a completely different ball game. It didn't matter what other goofy shit y'all was doing on the card. Kurt Angle was doing something serious. Or at least if Kurt Angle was doing silly stuff, he still get in the ring and his shit still looked good. His matches still looked good. He could do all of his stuff. He wasn't, flopping all over the place. He didn't look like shit. But can you say the same for Chris Jericho? No. The entire run of Chris Jericho as AEW World Champion was okay. It was the right thing to do. Jericho did bring some legitimacy to AEW. But for most people, Jericho is an out of shape, way overpaid, attitude era dinosaur. Okay, that's pretty much what it is. And it seems like he just has a long streak of, I don't give a fuck about this. So I'm just going to get what I can get and get the fuck out of here. And that's what it seems like to me. When Jericho comes out and he's talking about the demos, so now he wants to be the demo god because he wants to explain the demos to people. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck is this? Is this something that really Chris Jericho would have done in WWE? No, he wouldn't have done that shit. He probably wouldn't even had the opportunity to do that shit. Because guess what? This man would have had more control over the Jericho character and the Jericho segments that he would have been like, why the fuck do you even care about that stuff? Like that's not even it's not your job to draw ratings. You don't even worry about that. That's Cena's job. That's Batista's job. That's Randy Orton's job. You're Chris Jericho. Go out there and be funny. It was the downside of that. And now Jericho is expected to be the guy that draws interest, the guy that draws viewers. So when he does, he gets overboard about it. I'm the million viewer man. But his work is not nearly that good. We're really just watching Chris Jericho because it's Chris Jericho. It's like when people it's similar to Undertaker, similar to Hulk Hogan in when he had that match with Randy Orton. What was it, 2012? Maybe 2011 or 2006? I don't know. Whatever year he had that match with Randy Orton, and it wasn't really all that great. I think it was 2006 or 2007. I don't know how I got to 2012. I'm pretty sure Hulk Hogan was not wrestling in 2012. But as he was, he might have wrestled in TNA. But sometimes these guys are over the hill and they still have something to add. And Jericho does have something to add. I'm not going to say like he's completely washed and he needs to get the fuck out of here. What I'm saying is, and I said this in a comment in the Jim Cornette video, is that Jericho has become the kind of guy who used to hold him down. Like Jericho used to talk shit about Hall and Nash coming to WCW, didn't care about the product, didn't really care about anything. They had creative control, so they went out there and did whatever they wanted. They wore Hawaiian shirts and jumped into pools. and they didn't really care about making new stars. Jericho pretends that he really cares about making new stars, right? But does he really? I mean, Jericho has lost a million matches. Do you really think that him losing to Orange Cassidy made Orange Cassidy a star? Do you think if Chris Jericho wanted to make Orange Cassidy a star, he wouldn't have did all the comedy shit? I mean, the thing is, Jericho knows how to get heat. He knows how to build heat. He knows what he's doing. Jericho just doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't care. He's the biggest star on the brand, and he knows it. He knows that AEW would not get the 600, 700,000 viewers that they do get if he's not on the show. He already knows that. Jericho knows his value to this brand to the degree that he dares you to say something about it. He could threaten to sit at home and not say anything. You can't use my name to promote this show anymore. Hell, NXT will fucking beat you in the ratings then. But because he's Chris Jericho and he has a name, he can do something like commentary and people will be like, oh, okay, Jericho's doing commentary. I want to see what's up. But he has become like Hall and Nash, where he just basically is treating Tony Khan like a fucking ATM. There is no other excuse for some of the shit that he's been pulling. He had an anniversary match with Dr. Luther. Of all people, you would think if Tony Khan was smart and was saying, you know what, we're going to have Chris Jericho in a, this is your anniversary. We're going to give you a big match. Would have been like, fine. Okay, you could have picked somebody, could have blew a pay-per-view match on this television show just to show, or you could have, brought in somebody to have this big match. I mean, you had a bunch of people that were not being used. You could have had a rematch with Adam Page because they already wrestled on pay-per-view. You could have had a rematch with Kenny Omega because, Jericho wants to prove that he can still hang 30 years into the business. You could have had Cody. You could have had Jericho wrestle Brody Lee and win the TNT title or something. You could have had anything. You literally could have had anything. If you were thinking about building new stars, you really could have built a new star in this situation, in this position. Tony Khan let Chris Jericho talk him into bringing in Serpentico and Dr. Luther. That's what Tony Khan did. Because he is he's so starry-eyed at Chris Jericho. Because again, we're looking at Chris Jericho and thinking, Y2J Chris Jericho, main event of WrestleMania Chris Jericho. Come on, baby, Chris Jericho. That's not what this guy is. This is a little bit of the bubbly Chris Jericho. This is half effort, full monetization Chris Jericho. He monetizes everything he says on AEW. He has a t-shirt for everything because he's going to get this money out of this shit. Because he already knows if it doesn't last, I need to be able to go to Vince and be like, look at all these t-shirts I sold when I was in AEW. Look at all these tickets I sold when I was in AEW. You should give me more money. That's what this is about. This is about padding his resume for the eventual return to WWE, and you can say, look, maybe physically I can't do it anymore, but my name is still worth something because I was able to draw over there. Unlike Kurt Angle, who went to TNA and TNA kind of crumbled under Kurt Angle's watch. It had nothing to do with Kurt Angle, by the way. Kurt Angle was great. He drew the biggest pay-per-view buy rate of TNA's entire run. But by the time Kurt Angle came back, he wasn't Kurt Angle anymore, and everybody knew that. The same is going to happen to Chris Jericho. By the time Chris Jericho, let's say AEW gets the 4 years. At that point, Chris Jericho will be 54, 55 years old. Wrestling is over for him. This is his last run. This is his ride off into the sunset, and he's doing it basically fucking off in AEW. He's tag teaming with Jake Hager. That's who he's tag teaming with. Again, if you think Chris Jericho was going to make a star, wouldn't he tag team with Sammy Guevara? Wouldn't he tag team with somebody who actually had a future? Jake Hager doesn't have a future. I mean, if you think about this stuff, it would make a little bit more sense, right? Now, Jericho did the right thing when it comes to carrying the AEW title and dropping it to Moxley. Moxley was the right guy. Similar to Jericho, he had the pedigree of being in WWE champion, but he was younger. So he could do more. Jericho could then coast after that. He didn't have the pressure of being the champion on him anymore. And since he gave away that title and said, hey, Moxley, you run with the ball now. Jericho just basically said, fuck it, I'm gonna do whatever I want. Okay? And that sort of mentality is almost vampiric. I can just look at it and I can tell that he is just a gigantic drain on AEW. And I'm not saying that, again, let me be clear. AEW needs Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho does not need AEW. Okay? He could always go back. Vince probably wouldn't give a fuck. He probably don't even know Chris Jericho's in AEW right now. You know, he probably just like, where's Jericho? He probably still calling for him. Probably still calls him on the phone. Like, you gonna make it to Raw, pal? He's like, no, probably not. You know, it's these kinds of things. It's obvious to people who are paying attention. Jericho is not in AEW to build new stars. He's not. Because if he did, he would make better decisions than the ones he make now. He wouldn't have done the whole arguing with the drone thing with Matt Hardy. He wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have wasted our time with the demo guide. He wouldn't be arguing with people on Twitter about, Dr. Luther saying fuck you to all the various fans who says, like, why are you wrestling Dr. Luther? Fuck you. And all this other unnecessary, bitter, angry, stupid shit that Chris Jericho has been doing for the last year and a half. He wouldn't be doing it. And he certainly wouldn't have been doing it under WWE contract. So that should tell you he doesn't give a fuck about AEW. He does not give a fuck. He already knows this brand is dead without me. So what the fuck Tony Khan gonna do? He ain't gonna do shit. He ain't gonna do shit. Jericho has become Kevin fucking Nash, the person that he really didn't like the most in WCW. That's who he has become. He has become Kevin fucking Nash. Now, it took him longer to get there because Kevin Nash was in his early 30s when he was Kevin Nash. You know, not giving a fuck about what happened on WCW and just fucking around and taking the paycheck and not giving a shit about whether new stars were made or anything like that. Jericho's at this point now where he's made new stars already. And he's, tried to do that stuff. He's spent his whole entire career helping other people. He's selfish now. And I can't blame him. I cannot blame him. It is what it is, but I'm just telling the truth. The state of Chris Jericho right now is he's selfish as fuck. He is not putting forth full effort into making any new stars. Now, he may put some real effort into MJF because MJF has a real future. He may put some real effort in. But for the most part, I'm not seeing it. Even when he wrestles the young guys, like Isaiah Cassidy or Orange Cassidy, or either some of these other people. The fact that he even used the Judas effect, which is a spinning back fist that he sometimes even fucks up, should tell you that he's not really putting that much effort into this. And I know that he's older, he can't do all of his stuff anymore. But the fact, just look at it. Just look at the preponderance of the evidence. Jericho does not give a fuck. He's at the point where all he wants to do is sit in the pool, collect a paycheck, and sip champagne. It's the life. Hey, look, it is what it is. I just want to make sure that everybody else notices too. Jericho doesn't give a fuck about this stuff. He doesn't give a fuck about AEW. It's just a paycheck. And you know what? Can't say there's anything wrong with that. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share the video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you guys later. If you think that Chris Jericho I'm being a little too hard on him, these are the following tweets right after I recorded this video. Chris Jericho, great to see the AEW main event of Jericho and Real Jake Hager versus King Serpentico and Kill Luther Kill increased 10% from the previous segment and doubled the WWE NXT demo. Plus, female viewership was up in that time slot. Just proves that Luther is a money draw and a sex machine. Fan responded, take notes from Kyle O'Reilly and Finn Balor. Jericho responded, sure, how to fuck each other up during a match so they can't work for months. Hashtag smart wrestling. That's the kind of shit they used to do in Japan, though. See, it didn't happen in the Tokyo Dome, so it wasn't good. Even though, yeah, I do agree with a little too stiff. I can give Jericho that credit. I mean, he's been doing this a long time. He knows, but why is he responding to these people? Like, he's been cussing fans out all night. Continuing, he says, heard at Jim Cornette is still burying me for my work in AEW. All good because my stuff has been amazing and huge moneymaker for my company. But the best part is, if he would just shut the fuck up and pull his head out of his ass, we would probably offer him a consultant job. This is Chris Jericho in 2020. He does not give a fuck. Okay, he doesn't care. He's a wine aunt. That's Chris Jericho in 2020. But thank you guys again. I probably and that's just proof. That's a cherry on top of my video. Thank you guys.